WSIT stands for Web Services Interoperability. So let's see what WSIT is all about. Okay. So first, we are going to talk about the level of interoperability, and then we are going to see which level of interoperability WSIT is trying to address. And then we are going to talk about WSIT features, and then we are going to see how to configure WSIT. So as you are going to see later on, WSIT actually includes security, reliability, MTOM, and things like that. So here in this presentation, I'm gonna just give you a big picture of what the WSIT is all about, and then we're gonna actually have the other presentations on reliability and MTOM and security. Okay. All right. So if you think about the levels of interoperability between two communicating partners, you can think of interoperability at different levels or different layers. Okay, on the bottom we have a transport level, the interoperability. So HTTP, SMTP, TCP, and others. Okay, so I mean this transport has to be common between two communicating parties before they can communicate, right? And then we have what is called the wire protocol interoperability. So we are talking about data binding. This is something I actually talked about when we talk about the SOAP, right? They have to use a common encoding schemes, even if they are using common transport. For example, unless they agree upon how an integer or string is supposed to be represented on the wire, then they are not going to be able to actually communicate. Okay, so in web services, we all agree that the data types are supposed to be based on XML schema. Okay, the common info set is basically what we are actually talking about as well. So again, we are talking about XML schema based info set. And then we have a system level, the interoperability. In fact, this is the focus of WSIT. So here we are talking about security and trust models and reliable messaging and things like that. Okay, so if you want to send your message in reliable fashion, one and only one's reliability level, they have to agree upon that reliability, layer of interoperability. Unless they agree upon that, they are not going to be able to communicate. With the same thing with the security. If the service says that whenever some client wants to communicate with me, I need to have them to send X, the 509 certificate. And if that requirement is not met by the client, meaning if the client does not send the message with that kind of security aspect as part of the SOAP header structure, then there will not be any interoperability. So we are talking about the system level interoperability, and that's what the WSIT is focused on. Okay, and of course you have application level interoperability, and this is completely application specific, so that's not something that we are going to be concerned about here. Okay, from WSIT standpoint. So what is WSIT? So WSIT is basically Java implementation of WS star specifications in the area of security, reliability, and transaction, and and other domains. Okay, and it's built on the top of JAX Web Services. So JAX Web Services support the WSIT. So again, the goal is to be able to interoperate with other vendors, web services other vendors' web services implementation, which supports the same set of the features of security, reliability, and transaction, and the binary message transfer and things like that. Okay, so WSIT is basically, you can think of it as a Java implementation of these WS star specifications. So we can actually see some of this WS star specification later on. So WS star specification includes specifications regarding security, reliability, transaction, addressing, and things like that. Okay. So if you see web services stack on the WSIT, this is what you'll probably see. On the bottom we have a transport, and we have on the top of it we have data binding. So this is what we're talking about is encoding levels. If you actually see, we're talking about this wire protocol, which covers encoding. Okay, and then we have SOAP-based messaging. Okay, so MTOM and web services with attachment, SOAP with attachment, and then we have the system level functionality such as security, reliability, transaction, and things like that, and also metadata such as the WSDL and message exchange policy and things like that. So again, WSIT focused on this layer of interoperability, this guy. Okay, and on the top you have an application. So this picture is the same thing, except here we actually specify what is the WS star specifications in regard to security, in regard to reliability, in regard to transaction, in regard to metadata. Okay, so here in web services security area, you have several specifications: web services security specification, the WS security specification, WS trust specification, WS security conversation specification, and things like that. And on the reliability, there are two specifications: WS reliability messaging and WS reliability messaging policy specification. So when we say WS star specification, we are talking about the collection of all these WS specifications in regard to security, reliability, transactions, and metadata. Alright, so let's move on to WSIT features. So here we are mostly focused on reliable messaging and security and atomic transaction, optimized communication, and bootstrapping communication. And we are going to cover these two in a separate specification, separate presentation. So bootstrapping communication is basically defined by WS metadata exchange. It's basically how to get visual document of the service. Okay, so as we learned so far, visual document is the contract between client and server, and that should include all the contracts that are needed for client and the server to be able to communicate, and that should include the system level requirements such as security and reliability and transaction. Okay. Optimized communication. So this is something that we are going to talk about in separate presentations. So it defines wire format optimization, and it is represented by MTOM and XOP. So this is from W3C. So this is how you can actually transmit binary data as MIME attachments, and avoiding base64 encoding. Okay, so we are going to actually talk about these things in detail in separate presentations. So if you don't understand what I'm talking about here, that's perfectly fine. It also actually talk about fast info set. Fast info set is a way of the improving web services communication performance. The thing, well, we use you probably have heard the term info set a couple of times. Okay, but I didn't explain the concept of it in detail. So let me actually take this opportunity to explain what XML info set is all about. Okay, the concept of XML info set was introduced, in fact, the SOAP 1.2 and WSDL 1.2 as well. And before XML info set, the way that you are going to send XML document is basically XML string. Okay. Now, it actually is not. It's actually just sending all the XML document in the XML native format is not actually good from the performance perspective. Okay, so let me give you an example. Suppose if you're trying to send XML document that contains 10,000 times of a particular address element. Okay. If you're trying to send that XML document, it's like in native format, it might actually have a 10,000 repetition of an element, right? Okay, it's address element. Okay, now it doesn't have to actually send the XML native format. Instead, what could be done is that you could actually send some kind of DOM element, that has the meta information indicating that, yeah, this is the address element and has to be repeated 10,000 times. Okay, So having some kind of meta information indicating that this particular element has to be repeated 10,000 times, as long as communicating partners understand that has to be done, then you can actually send this DOM object that contains this metadata to the server. Server should be able to recreate that XML document, right? So the reason they actually introduced this XML info set is that the representation of XML does not have to be in XML native format. Okay, it could be in fact different form. All right, as long as communicating partners can actually have an understanding of how to recreate the XML document at the end. Okay, well, they don't really have to actually create the XML document at the end. Basically all they want is some kind of object in order to actually represent it, right? So in the endpoint, they actually receive this DOM object, and then actually they can actually create some kind of object representation of it without going through the native XML format. So fast info set is the another scheme that take advantage of XML info set concept. In this case, instead of sending the native XML document, it might actually send the a binary format of it, as long as the communicating partners understand it. So but in this case, the binary format has to be understood based on XML schema. So as long as communicating partners have a common understanding of XML schema, then binary data can be actually transported instead of the native XML data, right? So it will actually improve the performance significantly. So that is basically what the fast info set concept. Okay. All right, and these things are all transparent to your application. As an application developer, you don't have to understand, how these things are done underneath. After all, this is all, the protocol level implementation, right? Okay. Okay, so how to configure the WSIT? So developers write consumer providers via web services, JAX web services, and EJB APIs. So you don't actually deal with any runtime APIs for WSIT at all. You basically supply some configuration file to enable and control project. Yeah, so Tango used to be the code name of this WSIT. So I should actually move this one. Nobody's using this term anymore. Okay. So you can configure a file written by hand. You can actually create the configuration file by hand, or you can produce using WSIT NetBeans module. So we're going to actually leverage NetBeans to create WSDL document, WSIT configuration file. Okay, so here, this is the server programming model. So you can actually create this WSIT configuration file, and then the deployment, during the deployment time, this is going to be used to create all the pieces that are needed. Okay, so you don't really have to deal with anything. Okay, so any implementations that support WSIT should actually be able to create whatever that is needed. Okay. Same thing on the client side. Okay, so client artifacts should be able to be created from the tool, and it should be able to, create the whatever stub code that understands whatever you specify. Okay, so in this case, the client artifacts are created from WSDL documents. So WSDL document should actually include all the WSIT features, whether that is a security related, or reliable messaging related, or the MTOM related, or fast info set related. WS import tool should be able to handle it, meaning it should be able to read WSDL document and should create correct stuff that understands how to create a SOAP message that contains the SOAP header structure that is relevant to security, reliability, and transaction, and the MTOM and fast info set and things like that. Alright, so that is the end of the presentation. So hopefully that gives you a sense of what the WSIT is all about.